I have a girl in kindergarten with her girl this year. I'm looking forward to seeing what we do for our talent show. My name's Joseph. I have struggled with anger and depression and patience, and I am the children's director here for Celebrate Recovery. Today has been kind of crazy for me, just like every day, because I'm just not the children's director. I'm the teenage director, I'm the nursery director, I'm the preschool director. And Pastor Chris was called out of town, so I was the emergency bus driver. It's just been one of those afternoons today. So I'm taking a breath. This is kind of the first time that I've got to kind of slow down. It's been kind of a hectic afternoon. So I thought that if I'm going to be up here and I'm the children's director, we'd play some cards tonight. Figured we'd have some fun. Because that's what we do back there with the children, and same with the teens, and same with preschool. We go back and we have a really good time. And when your kids are an issue or a problem, we try everything we can not to buzz you on that little pager up there, because we understand that if you're here, there's a reason why you're here. And we want to keep you here, and we want to keep you coming back. So if this is your first time here tonight, I want to thank you so much for coming. If you've been here before and taken a few weeks off, I encourage you to keep coming every week. And for my one family member that decided to come tonight, you made my whole night. So thank you. Cards. Have you ever thought about the cards that you've been dealt in your life? Have you ever stopped and examined life like it is a deck of cards? I think some of us would look at our hand that we've been given and say, you know what, I have a pretty good life, and I want to keep them all. And then maybe some of you would look at your hand and you would say, I don't like these cards very much. And if I could exchange these cards for these new cards, I think I'd be okay. But life is cards. We can't trade in the cards that we've been given in life. I mean, these are the cards that we've been given, whether we like it or not. And you know, it's funny, in life we kind of look at the ugly cards, and then we try to put the pretty cards in front of the ugly cards because we don't want to look at the ugly cards. We try and hide them behind something that's more noble or prettier, so we can hide them from other people. And that's kind of human nature, I guess, but deep down, we know that the cards that we've been dealt, there's no escaping who we are. The cards are who we are. So what if we were to stop and take a look at the cards that we've been given in life? Where do they come from? Is it coincidence, the cards that were dealt? Is it our choices? Or are the cards given to us from God? Tonight I'm going to share some of my cards with you. The hands that I've been dealt in the past, and some that I've actually been dealt just recently. My hand I was dealt as a baby, we're not going to win any big pots by any means. There was abandonment. Bless you. Rejection. But then there was also adoption, love, and Jesus, my Jesus card. I was taken into a home by parents who loved me and were willing to raise my twin brother and I, and love us unconditionally. I'm going to keep this Jesus card close. I'm going to put it right here, because I may have to put him in play one day. Now, my parents are Jehovah's Witnesses, and they took me to church with them. Now, even at a young age, I quickly learned the cards that they were dealing in that religion. Restrictions, rules, and regulations. I had a hard time with those cards, even as a child. And not knowing my parents, my actual biological parents, going through adoption, I created a horrible speech problem. I was stuttering so bad that I could hardly speak at all. I had started to shut down at school, at home, and I was struggling every time I spoke. But then I was dealt an amazing card, the mentor card. An older gentleman by the name of Brother Cannon. He took me underneath his wing and said that he was going to help me with my speech. He was going to do that by getting me involved in the ministry work. I had all the doubts about this. As a child, I forgot I was already dealt the Jesus card and the rules and the restrictions. I mean, what am I going to speak about as a child? But my mentor made it very clear to me, whatever you speak about, let it be his words, and only teach what can be found in the Bible. I thought that was a pretty bold statement coming from a Jehovah's Witness. His words, I thought, his words. Well, I know how my words sound. They're kind of like, I just couldn't talk. So I was a wreck. But when that day came, I took the stage, I prayed silently in my head, and for 5 minutes, I never stuttered one time. I could not believe it. I mean, I just went 5 minutes, and I didn't stutter one time. I knew this had to be the work of the Lord. I mean, I still stuttered with my day-to-day activities, when I was at school, when I was with friends, but not when I took the stage to give talks. In the early 80s, I lost my mentor, and he passed away of old age. My adopted father, he was dealt a few not-so-nice cards. Unemployment, bankruptcy, and we left Casper and moved to Billings, Montana. We started to attend the Witness Church there, and I went directly back into the ministry work. Billings dealt me a new set of cards. New school, new friends, new ministry, death. The death card. I guess we all are dealt this card sooner or later in our lives. I was dealt the death card April 18th, 1986. If you look at the screen, you will see a picture of the Rothstein family. Ah, there they are. And that young boy there, well, that was my best friend. That was AJ. That was the most amazing family. They were the nicest people you could ever know. Their father took a job and he was transferring out of state, and we had a going away party for AJ and his family. And they left that night to their hotel room in Billings. We hugged them, we kissed them, sent them on their way. Couldn't wait for them to come back and visit. Unfortunately, they met this man, David Thomas Dawson. The crime. Dawson broke into a family Billings, Montana motel room on 18th of April, 1986. He forced the Rothstein family to go to his room at the same motel, which was located directly next door to their own room. He bound the family of four with tape, gagged them, and took their money. Over the next 2 days, Dawson strangled 3 of the 4 family members to death. 39-year-old David Rothstein, his wife 39-year-old Monica, and their 11-year-old son Andrew. Their 15-year-old daughter Amy was found alive in Dawson's motel room 2 days after the murders. The trial for Dawson came to a close in February of 1987. The jury deliberated about 14 hours and returned with guilty verdicts for 3 counts of deliberate homicide, 4 guilty verdicts for kidnapping each member of the Rothstein family, and a guilty verdict for robbery. Dawson waived the ability to appeal his conviction and sentence. When asked if he had any last words, Dawson said no. He was executed by lethal injection on 11th of August, 2006 under the authority of the state of Montana. The first execution in Montana in more than 8 years. This rocked me to the core. I was dealt anger, hurt, depression, and I wanted to deal my own cards. I wanted to deal revenge. Maybe a little punishment too would be good. But Jesus showed me, though, because I had a great mentor, that we are to love our enemies. Matthew 5:43. You have heard that it was said, love your neighbor and hate your enemy. But I tell you, love your enemies and pray for those who persecute you. I would like to stop and take a minute and read a letter that I wrote to Mr. Dawson. Dear Mr. Dawson, you don't know who I am. We have never met. But 30 years ago, you did something to my best friend and his family that I considered unforgivable. You took their smiles and love away from us forever. Since I was 13, I have carried this chain of bondage, anger, and hatred, and I no longer wish to carry it any longer. Tonight, publicly, I want you to know that I forgive you for the horrible deed that you did. I forgive you for all of the pain you caused to me, my family, and our community. I no longer carry the bitter heart for you that I have in the past. Jesus has set me free. Safe travels for you into the next life, my friend, and now I bid you farewell. God bless. Joseph. Man, I wish I could have done that 30 years ago. 30 years is a long time to carry a chain like that. I loved Billings, but again, those crazy cards were dealt once more. Bankruptcy, unemployment, no jobs anywhere. And we were off to California, the granola state, as my father would call it. And I realized rather quickly that the Jehovah's Witnesses were quick to deal their own hand. I was too young for ministry work, they said. I was not allowed to play sports in school. Not allowed to attend school dances. No student council or any clubs in school whatsoever. I was fine with all of that except the ministry work. Then we were dealt a card that punched us in the gut. Disassociate your children. My parents had some older children who were disfellowshipped or thrown out, so to say, because they smoked cigarettes. I remember like it was yesterday, these fine-dressed gentlemen, they were called elders, come to our home and told my mother and father that they had to cease all relationships with these two children who had sinned by smoking cigarettes. My mother broke down, and there was a lot of nights at the dinner table that my mom cried and cried about this, and she was heartbroken, and I was furious. I took my Jesus card, and I put it back in the deck. I figured if following Jesus had meant not having a relationship with your children, then I'm throwing that card back. I got really angry after that. In the 8th grade, I was suspended over 20 days for fighting. Between my two best friends, Kyle and Ty, and myself, we were suspended more than the 7th and the 9th grade combined. We thought that was pretty impressive. But I was mad at those church leaders and the cards that they dealt us again, rules and regulations. But then my mentor card came in play one more time. And it was dealt one more time by a man named Mr. Burgess. He was the football coach, and he was my history teacher. I missed a lot of history due to my extracurricular activity. And he and I one day sat down and had a talk. When he had found out what happened to my parents, he apologized, and he told me he was a Christian. We talked for a long while after school, and he and I would chat it up about all kinds of things, but our best talks were always about stories from the Old Testament. He invited me out for football, and I told him, look, man, I'm way too small. But he would always remind me of stories like David slaying Goliath, and Joshua told to be strong and courageous. And we used to talk about how big we thought that Joshua really was. Both of us agreed he probably was not a very big man. I was needing that mentor card. I was needing it bad. I was really struggling at this point. So I signed up the following year, and not knowing anything about football, I had never played or really watched, I raised my hand to play guard. When I found out what the guard position was, I thought, oh, what a huge mistake I have made. I can't play offensive line. And I went to the coach to complain about this. He just said, Joseph, Joshua 1:7, be strong and very courageous. He dealt me the Joshua card. Now, I know the story of Joshua very well, and Joshua had some big shoes to fill. I had a big hole to fill at the guard position. And I was taught the value of hard work and heart by my mentor. My mentor said, Joseph, there's a lot of guys that are gifted and they have natural skill, but they tend to get lazy because they are gifted. A man of hard work and Jesus in their heart will never give up. I took that to heart, and I ran more laps. I did more reps. I took more snaps. I stayed longer than everybody else. And not only did I do well at the guard position, I excelled at it. I was small and quick. I got to pull around the ends. I was out on the linebackers before they could take their read step and step back and realize that I was even there. It was amazing. And with 2 games left, our tailback got hurt. So I asked my coach if I could maybe move back and give that a try. He just smiled and threw me my jersey, number 40. So I went from number 52 to number 40. The hardest part of that transition, though, was all the new plays that I had to learn. But the bonus was I already knew where the line was going. I had just came off the line. I had played guard for 8 games. So it was like seeing what was going to happen ahead before I even got the ball. The mentor card I was dealt is still one of my favorite cards today. I coasted through high school, playing football all the way through. I stayed out of trouble, and I went to work out of high school and maintained that football work of ethic. The cards of hard work, stay late, and go in early and get your butt to work. I came back to Wyoming in 91, and in 1996, I was dealt a card. It only said, Eve. Now, I was 23, and honestly, I had nothing to do with girls. They were expensive, they were high maintenance, and a lot of work. But just as Eve was made for Adam, I believe that my Jill was made for me. We had hung out for quite a while, and God came up one day, and she couldn't understand how I had so much knowledge of the Bible, but I didn't go to church. I explained the cards I was dealt, the rules, the disassociation of children, the regulations, and then I knew why God drew me that Eve card. My future wife said something that changed my world forever. Do you believe that because of what you were raised to believe? Or have you honestly searched the Lord for yourself? I was reminded of Isaiah 55:6. Seek the Lord while he may be found. Call on him while he is near. I thought about that, and I had never really pursued God on my own. Yes, I had seen one side of one religion, but personally, I had never pursued him. I was reminded that I did put faith in him. I mean, I didn't stutter as a child, but I threw my Jesus card back in the deck. But Proverbs 8:17, one of my favorite books of the Bible, says, I love those who love me, and those who diligently seek me will find me. Well, my wife and I started seeking together. We had a few different churches over the course of a few months, and after several months, we ended up at Highland Park. I embraced it because, well, it's huge. I thought, I'll get lost in this crowd. No one will notice me. No one will know who I am. And so I just did what's called a ride on the bench. I just came and sat in church and didn't do anything else. I would come on Sunday after Sunday after Sunday, but that was it. I didn't try to get involved. I didn't try to serve. I just thought that was enough. Until I sat in that seat right there. I was here for a concert with my family. And a poem came up on the screen. And I was dealt this card. Take me deeper, Lord, take me deep. No more just skimming the surface. No more being shallow or superficial. No more just giving you lip service. Take me to the center of your life. Take me out of self-imposed strife. Take me to where you are in control. Take me to where I surrender it all. Take me to the depth of your heart. Take from me what keeps us apart. Take me deeper, Lord. Take me deep. Take me all the way down with you until I rise to your perfect will. I was hit in the head with the Jesus stone. And after that poem, I felt a breeze pass over me. And I asked my wife if she had felt it, but she was like, no, I'm rocking the concert. It's awesome. Was I the only one that felt that? I knew something had happened right there, but I wasn't sure. I kept my heart open, and I felt like he was starting to seek me. And one day at service, our CR pastor took the church. He was asking for bus drivers, and I thought, oh, all right, maybe that might be a good place to serve. And so I passed him in the atrium on the way out, and I said, hey, I heard you were needing bus drivers. Keep me in mind, and I just walked away. My wife said, hey, you didn't even exchange any information with that man. And I said, you know what? If it's going to happen, it'll happen. And less than a week later, I ran into him again, and he said, hey, I need your info. That card, no more skimming the surface, started coming into play. I began driving bus on Friday nights, and while attending church, we did a series on the book, Love Does. I like your shirt. Love Does by Bob Goff. Chapter 9 is titled, Just Say Yes. It has an opening quote for that chapter. I used to think you had to be special for God to use you, but now I know you just simply need to say yes. The Yes card. I took this card serious after I read that book. You see, God is doing amazing things in all of our lives. And each of us gets to decide every time whether to lean in or step back, to say yes or just ignore it. I decided if I was going to get off the bench and get in the game, I'd better start saying yes. Then Pastor Chris asked me if I would like to work with the teens. So I said yes. Then after working with them on a Friday, I had a dream. The dream was that I was supposed to go to seminary school. I mentioned it to my wife, who just sort of shrugged it off like, yeah, it's just a dream, not a big deal. But she knew it was no coincidence when later that week I got a call from Highland Park Church. And they said, we would like to send you to school for Celebrate Recovery. I learned right then, he's dealing the cards now. The yes card. I was scared because I knew that he was talking to me. I needed something. He dealt me the faith card. Have faith. I was like, okay, I got faith, but I'm still a little worried. I don't know if I can do this. Be strong and be courageous. He dealt me that card. Now, my Jesus card was back on the table. But he and I had to talk about a few things. And he had a few things to say, and you know what? I had a few things to voice myself. But our conversation came over the death card. Although I was not dealt that card again. You see, our next door neighbors were dealt that card. Their son had graduated from the University of Wyoming. It would be their firstborn son, their oldest. And the night before graduation ceremony, their son fell to his death off the UW Stadium. Our neighbors, excited to see their first child graduate, they were pulling out of their drive to leave Saturday morning and was stopped by police at 6 a.m. in our court. Instead of watching him graduate, they had to drive to Laramie to identify his body. The day of the funeral, I broke down in my home. I had realized I had never made amends to Jesus for me taking his card off the table. I was on my knees for hours, and I felt him in my room that day. I had a lot to say to him, and he had a lot to say to me. But I could feel his loving forgiveness washing over me. And again, I was convinced to put my Jesus card back on the table and put it fully into play that day. 1 Peter 4:10, as each of us has received a gift, employ it in serving one another as good managers of the grace of God in its various forms. If anyone speaks, let it be as if it were the very words of God. If anyone serves, let it be as of the strength which God supplies, that in all things God may be glorified through Jesus Christ, who belongs all of the glory forever and ever. Amen. When I was baptized in the river, this card right here that I was dealt as a child has produced the most amazing cards. You see, really, he is the dealer. Because I put his card into play, he has dealt me strength, confidence, wisdom, power, patience, humility. I am slow to speak and quick to listen, all because of this card. In the last few weeks, my son was sent to Denver Children's Hospital for a medical emergency. He dealt me perseverance. 2 weeks ago, my mother had a massive heart attack. 8 minutes of no heartbeat. 8 minutes of no oxygen. My friend and someone I consider my current mentor, Pastor Don Bergstrom, came up to ICU and prayed over her. And I told Don, don't sugarcoat it for me, Don. Please be honest. How does it look? He said, Joe, I don't think she's going to make it. She was on life support. She was on breathing tubes. And the night they took her off, the doctor said, she probably won't be here in the morning when you get here. But again, he's the dealer. And he dealt us a miracle. She made a full recovery. And she gets to come home next week. You know, he's starting to deal me cards now. He's dealt me the mentor card for me to play. I mentor teens in the Landing, children over in Celebration Place, and one of my favorite things is my kindergarten class on Thursday mornings. And believe it or not, he just brings the hurt ones to me. I really don't even have to look for the hurt ones. And my wife and I have even had kids with nowhere to go just come and stay with us in our home until we can figure out a plan for them. And that's not me. Well, that wasn't me before. But this card has changed me. See, we've all been dealt this card. Everyone in the world has been dealt this card. But not everyone chooses to play this card. Free will. But if you're looking at your hand of cards, and some of those cards you were holding, you just seem like you want to throw them away, I urge you to play this card. See, we've all been dealt this Jesus card. Let it talk to you. Let it change you. Let it strengthen you. Let it help you forgive people. And when you see all of the amazing, awesome things this card has done for you, then take this card and share it with somebody else. Remind them that they also have been dealt this card. And if they would only put it in play, it won't make those other cards so difficult. This is everybody's ace in the hole. You can't lose if we all play this card. And as for the Jehovah's Witnesses and all their R words, rules and restrictions and regulations, sort of reminds me a bit of the Pharisees back in Jesus' day. You see, the Pharisees didn't associate with anyone who was unclean. Not the sinners, not the drunks, and not the prostitutes. If you were unclean to the Pharisees, you were unworthy. Luke 19:10, for the Son of Man came to seek and save the lost. You see, Jesus was in constant battle with these people who wouldn't deal with the unclean. And I feel like I'm that way today. Jehovah's Witnesses carry a DNR card, do not resuscitate. And they came to the hospital last week, like the Pharisees, and they demanded to know who gave the okay to save my mother when she had a DNR card. My father of 84 years old sunk in his chair. He didn't want to answer, but my wife sure did. And she stood up and she told them, God saved her life, and he's not finished with her yet. And if he was, he would have punched her card. He would have taken her, but instead he saved her life. They were quiet, and they left. She is right. You see, they forget the most important R word of all when it comes to Jesus. Relationship. That's what he wants to have with us, with me and with you. He wants to have a relationship. He wants to know me. He wants to know you on a personal level. And once we start to do that, he will handle all of the bad cards that we don't want to hold in our hands. And if you are dealt a bad hand, play that Jesus card, because these are the cards that come with it. Forgiveness, strong, courageous, faith, amends, perseverance, miracles, mentors. It goes on and on and on and on. God is so good. And if you have not fully put your Jesus card into play today, today is the day. I invite you, if you're new today, to attend Newcomers 101. It's out the doors. Take a right and take another right. It's right around the corner. I urge you to go if you're here for your first time. That's a great place to start if you want to start playing your Jesus card. But before we go, I would like to ask several of our elders to come up front, because I would like to ask for an altar call tonight. And if there's anybody here tonight that's struggling or is unsure on playing this Jesus card, I urge you to come down and pray with one of our leaders. And they'll be happy to pray with you, because that's what we do here at Celebrate Recovery. We pray for each other and lift each other up. I thank you for your time tonight.